We are continuing in our summer sermon series, Extraordinary, and before I start with the reading of the scripture, I want to offer my thanks to Jack, who filled the pulpit last Sunday while I was on vacation, and I hope that together we learned some interesting and new things about Zacchaeus. Today we're going to turn to the book of Numbers, a book I know that you love and cherish and have read over and over again in your life of faith. Numbers 27 verses 1 through 11 is our reading for today. You'll find that reading on the front of your Grow Pray study guide. Then the daughters of Zelophehad came forward. Zelophehad was son of Hepher, son of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, son of Joseph, a member of the Masonite clans. The names of his daughters were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They stood before Moses, Eleazar the priest, the leaders, and all the congregation at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and they said, "Our father died in the wilderness. He was not among the company of those who gathered themselves together against the Lord in the company of Korah, but died for his own sin, and he had no sons. Why should the name of our father be taken away from his clan because he had no son? Give to us a possession among our father's brothers." Moses brought their case before the Lord, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "The daughters of Zelophehad are right in what they are saying. You shall indeed let them possess an inheritance among their father's brothers, and pass the inheritance of their father on to them. You shall also say to the Israelites, if a man dies and has no son, then you shall pass his inheritance on to his daughter. If he has no daughter, then you shall give his inheritance to his brothers. If he has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his father's brothers. And if his father has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to the nearest kinsman of his clan, and he shall possess it. It shall be for the Israelites a statute and ordinance, as the Lord commanded Moses." This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
When I was in high school, the popular thing for athletes was to wear Letterman jackets. You know what Letterman jackets are? Maybe some of you have a Letterman jacket. It was very popular in my high school experience. Well, it was popular for the boys. All of the boys, all of the male athletes got Letterman jackets. Football and basketball players, baseball, even tennis and track athletes received Letterman jackets. But the female athletes, at our end of the season banquets, we got varsity letters, but no jacket to put them on. And we were told that we could sew them onto sweaters in home ec class. Yeah, the way I felt. I have 4 varsity letters in gymnastics. And my team, on my senior year, won second in state. Our football team lost almost every game all 4 years that I was in high school. Still, all of them got Letterman jackets, and we just got the letter. After our junior season of gymnastics, some of us girls got together and we started talking about this inequity. It's not fair, was the echo that was heard in the gymnasium. We're athletes. We are athletes just like the boys. Our team even has a better record than the boys' teams. Why in the world can't we have a Letterman jacket? Well, just the name ought to have given us a clue, right? We lived in a system of male-dominated sports. Letterman. It's not just a word. It was a signal to a system of rules that was designed for and lived out in favor of the males who were athletes in our school. But this did not stop me from taking believe in a protest from our system or of our system. I went first to find a catalog because, of course, it was way before the internet, and so the only way to get a Letterman jacket was to order it from a special catalog. But I couldn't get my hands on one of these catalogs. There was no such availability for me. And so I went to the female coaches in our school and found out they did not have access to these catalogs either. So I marched my little old self right down to the head football coach's office. He was also the athletic director, and I demanded a Letterman jacket to be ordered for me and any other girl in our school. And I was promptly dismissed. I was mad. I was really angry. And I wish I had known back then about Mila and Noah and Hogla and Milcah and Tirzah, the daughters of Zelophehad, or the daughters of Z, as we called them in seminary. Maybe they would have been instructive for me in how to approach a patriarchal system and win. The daughters of Z. How many of you know them? See? Look, no, we don't know them. They are so important that they are mentioned in 5 different places in the Hebrew text. They're mentioned 3 times in Numbers, in 26 and 27 and in Numbers 36. They're mentioned in Joshua 17 and in 1 Chronicles 7. Only the prophets Moses and Miriam, his sister, are mentioned in more books in the Hebrew Bible than these 5 women. So why do we not know anything about them? Why can't we recall their names? Why do we not even know who Zelophehad is? There are about 3,100 personal names mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. Only 170 of those names are of women. Most female biblical characters are mentioned in their relationship to a male character, the wife or the sister or the mother or the daughter of so-and-so. Yet these 5 women, they not only get named, they get named for bravery. For their bravery in challenging the patriarchal system of Torah. And we should know their names. The book of Numbers is one of 5 books in the Torah: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And the book of Numbers details the story of the Israelites in the wilderness period. They have been freed from slavery, and they've been given the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20, and the rest of the Torah is concerned with explaining these basic laws and with teaching and telling how those laws are to be lived out in the communal life of God's people. So the setting for the text that I read this morning, it's on the very edge of the promised land. They can see it. They are right there on the edge. Can you imagine having wandered in the wilderness for 40 years? After so many years, they're almost there. And there are 12 tribes in Israel. 12 tribes of Israel, and God has declared that each tribe will get an apportionment of this holy promised land. Each tribe will get a plot of land in accordance to the numbers of people in their tribe. Well, it's really the numbers of men in their tribe, over 20. So children and women don't count. And what we learn in our text this morning is that Zelophehad belonged to the tribe of Manasseh, but he dies in the wilderness. So his only kin, his 5 daughters, now stand with the rest of their Israelite family on the edge of this promised land. But for those daughters of Z, there is a snag in the system. The system is patriarchal. It's dominated by men, but more than just patriarchal, it's patrilocal, which means that wives live with their husbands' families. And so the land that is given to the husbands' families, not the wives' families. And more than that, it is patrilineal, which means that the land is passed on through male heirs. And these 5 daughters have no direct male heirs. Their father is dead, they are unmarried women, and they have no brothers. And they know that without a male in their family to inherit a plot of land for their family, that they will be left vulnerable. But more than that, they know that their whole tribe is going to be shortchanged in the giving out of the land. Because the amount of land is given based on the size of the tribe. And since women don't count, their tribe's not going to get as much land as it would have if Zelophehad, their father, were still alive, or if he had had any sons or brothers to have that land. So the daughters of Z present a legal challenge to the ordered system. This is what we read here. And it is what most rabbis and biblical interpreters deem as the very first lawsuit in our faith history. These 5 sisters propose an unlikely solution. They bring a legal case before Moses and the leaders of Israel. They become what my Hebrew Testament professor called the first legal dream team. And make no mistake about it, what they did required great courage. They dared to bring their case before Moses, the most revered leader of the Israelites, the one who had received the law, the one who was dictating the rules, the one who was interpreting these laws. And I'm betting that those 5 sisters remembered that somewhere along the way in the wilderness journey, Moses' own sister Miriam had challenged his authority, and when she did, she had been struck with leprosy. So I'm pretty sure they were a little afraid. There was some fear and trembling involved, but they went to Moses nonetheless, and they told him, "Give us this land." If you notice, they don't ask, they tell. They make their argument emphasizing the lack of male associations, and Moses then takes their case to God. And what does God say? Somebody did this. God says, yes, they are right in their argument. And we should stop here and make note that the word yes, ken in Hebrew, it does mean right or correct, but more deeply it means righteous. And so this is a powerful affirmation that these women are proclaimed by God to be right, to be correct, but they are also righteous. Their request is just. They are making the case for justice. And this is significant because here in Numbers 27, what we find is that God makes an amendment to the Torah. God gives a new instruction right here when these women bring their case. God says women can inherit the land and fathers have no sons. And these are ordinary women. They're women without significance. Not in personality. We don't really know much about their personalities. But we know that as women, they're without significance in community and they're without value. But they dared to approach their leader. And because of where they did it, in front of the dwelling place of God, what they did in essence was approach God. And God not only heard their case, but in an extraordinary move, God opened up the law to include women as heirs of the promise. These 5 women, they stand to us as evidence of courage in the face of God, what that courage looks like, and what courage in the face of God produces. What they show us more than anything else, I think, is faith. Faith that God would hear, and faith that God would understand their plea, and faith that God would act justly. Just prior to this text that we've read this morning, what happens earlier in Numbers is that the story describes how the Israelites are afraid to enter into the promised land. And so Moses develops this plan to send some spies out and to check out this land. And the spies have come back and they have given a report about how fortified this promised land is and how strong the people who are living there appear to be. And what the Israelites do when they hear this news is they cry out against Moses. And they ask for a new leader who will take them back to Egypt. So against such lack of trust, these 5 sisters show great faith. When others are longing to go back to certain slavery, these women, they lead by example, demanding their part in the future of God's people. And what's more, their request is not about selfish gain. It was to ensure that the future daughters would not suffer the same injustice. It was to ensure that their tribe would not be shortchanged in the land that was promised to that tribe. They took extraordinary risk for the future of their people. In the many years after my first foray into the fairness enterprise, working for the girls in my school to get Letterman jackets, I've been reminded just how far we have come and how far we still have yet to go. Here's another name you might not know. Clara Hale Babcock. You know her name? I'm a daughter of Clara. Every female ordained clergy woman in the Disciples of Christ is a daughter of Clara. Because Clara Hale Babcock was the first woman ordained in the Christian church, and it happened in 1888. You can't imagine that Letterman jackets were around in her day, but I can only imagine the kind of challenges she must have faced, being the first woman to minister in a patriarchal system. The first women who pushed open the doors at my own seminary, Lexington Theological Seminary, they were not even granted the most basic right, the right to a restroom. Because there were no women's restrooms at all at Lexington Theological Seminary. Because even though, as disciples of Christ, we tout Clara as the first woman ordained in the mainline church, none of our seminaries ever conceived of a time when women would enter seminaries and ask to be granted a theological education. But by the time I arrived at LTS in 1996, over half of the entering class was made up of women. We've come a long way. And we all stand on the shoulders of Clara Hale Babcock and those first women who dared to make their case before God and before our own church leaders for their rightful place in ministry. And what they did was brave. It was not in the least bit selfish because their actions were actions of faith. And they amended laws. They amended the rules about who was qualified to receive an education and to become ordained to serve in ministry. Those battles were not only for them, but they were for all who would come after them. They were for people like me. They were for people like Jill and Roy's daughter-in-law, who serves in ministry in our denomination. And maybe you don't think too much about what I'm about to say, but I think about it a lot. Madison Christian Church is a church that took a bold stand for justice in our region when you called me as your minister almost 9 years ago. Maybe you didn't know that I'm the first woman to serve as senior minister in North Alabama in our denomination, and the second in our entire region. When I think about that, when I remember the bold moves of people like Clara Hale Babcock and the first women who knocked on the doors of the seminaries in our denomination, and the women in ministry who came before me and made their cases for inclusion and leadership, when I remember the daughters of Z, that we all of us stand on their shoulders, when I remember them, I remember that because of them, we too can speak out for justice. We not only can, we should speak out for justice. For ourselves, yes, but more importantly for others. We can speak out with righteousness for that circle to be drawn ever and ever wider. I think about the wonderful ways that our denomination is calling for inclusion and justice for all people, even now, even this month at the General Assembly of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. When I remember that, I remember that it all started with our biblical ancestors, these 5 courageous women: Bela, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah, the daughters of Zelophehad, the dream team, those who dared to petition God for their rightful place in God's sacred family. So may their names be remembered and spoken when we recall the history of our extraordinary faith. And may we continue the righteous work that they began, the work of inclusion for all God's people. May it be so. Amen.